Over the last 2 months, the Integrity Unit has undertaken the biggest investigation in its relatively short history into the salary cap operations at the Parramatta Club. It's obtained more than 700,000 documents and interviewed board members, football staff, club officials, former officials, and a range of relevant parties. Regrettably, the results at this stage are not only disappointing, they're a stain on our game. The preliminary findings suggest the operation of a deliberate, coordinated and sustained system of salary cap cheating by the club. And based on the information we currently have, we believe the system was conducted with the knowledge and support of the club's board and senior executive. In short, the preliminary findings point to the operation of a range of strategies since as early as 2013 to get around the salary cap to give the club an advantage over its competitors. Based on these findings, we believe these strategies have been involved. Paying players undisclosed remuneration from the club's own resources, sourcing third-party agreements for players in breach of the salary cap rules, arranging with club suppliers to inflate or issue fictitious invoices to raise money that was to be made available to the players. We have given the club numerous invitations to come forward and be upfront about its activities, but to this point, they have failed to do so. The nature of these preliminary findings is such that the club has a final opportunity to do so, and we will consider the club's response with an open mind. It's important that everyone understands that we will not reach a final view on either conduct or the sanctions until the club and the officials have had a chance to respond. This decision follows a long period of instability at this club. In the last 7 years, this club has had 25 directors, 6 CEOs, and 4 head coaches. They've breached the salary cap rules in 5 of the last 6 years. As we sit here today, our preliminary findings suggest that the club is again over the salary cap for 2016. This has to stop, and it stops today. On the basis of the preliminary findings, I have issued show cause notices this morning to 3 members of the Parramatta board and 2 senior executives that proposes that their registration is cancelled. This means they will not be able to be involved with the club in any way. In terms of the club, I have issued a breach notice that proposes the maximum financial penalty of $1 million, with $250,000 of that to be suspended if the club accelerates the governance reforms recommended by PwC last year. And most regrettably, the Parramatta Eels will be docked all competition points accumulated so far during the 2016 Telstra Premiership, while the team has been in breach of the salary cap. The club will be able to accrue points as soon as it makes the necessary changes to comply with the cap, and I genuinely hope that is very soon. We will assist in that process wherever possible. I stress the findings are provisional in nature. No final view will be reached until the club and each of the officials are afforded a proper opportunity to respond. Our rules are clear, and we will follow them to the letter. The club and officials will be given a reasonable time to respond to the proposed penalties, and will consider those responses before making a final determination. I know this is a devastating outcome for many people, particularly the players and the fans. The strong performance of the Eels this year has been great for rugby league and has been great for their huge supporter base. If the preliminary findings prove to be justified, we cannot allow any club to continually thumb its nose at the salary cap. So we have to go through this pain for the long-term health of both the club and also the game. I stress this package of measures we're proposing will give the players and fans hope for the future. If the club moves quickly, they'll be playing for points in this year's premiership. I know from talking to the players this morning, they don't want to live under the constant threat of losing competition points. They want Parramatta to become the powerhouse team that it should be. That will only happen if the club has a very strong and competent board. The job of rebuilding this club starts now. Nick and I are happy to take some questions.
How did you come to 4 points? Was that always the case?
No, we've been working through this over a period of time, but I think in simple terms, whilst you're over the salary cap and you don't comply like your counterparts, you can't possibly accrue those points.
Todd, it sounds like
That's a decision for Parramatta.
So effectively, they've got 2 weeks to shed $570,000 worth of players.
They've got as much time as they need, but the simple message is they will not play for points until, like every other team, they're under the salary cap.
Todd, what was the quantum of the breach
Of this year's cap, they're more.
across the entire investigation?
Oh, I'll get Nick to talk specifically about the numbers, but for 2016, they're more than $500,000 over the cap.
Todd, what was the reaction from the players when you told them?
I think it'd be fair to say they were shattered. I really felt for the players this morning, and I was desperate to make sure that Nick and I faced them face to face this morning, and they found out this news from us directly. It would have been much easier to let one of the club do it, or for them to read a media release, but that's not what we decided to do. I wanted to face them, and I wanted them to hear it from us. I feel really sorry for the players. This is a really difficult time. They've worked really hard. They've played some great footy. But I've got a duty, and the game has a duty to represent 16 clubs and 16 groups of fans, and that's what we've done today.
Was there anger on their behalf? Was there any pushback?
I wouldn't call it pushback. I thought they were very respectful. I think Brad Arthur's done a wonderful job with that group of men, and he's going to need to do a really good job in the coming weeks and months to keep them all together, and I'm sure he can do that.
Did you get the impression that the players were angry, perhaps at their own board, at the bosses that have instigated this regime?
Yeah, that's a question for the players. Our job here is simple. We've got to uphold the rules of the game, and what we've done today is exactly that.
How did the board take the news?
Again, Nick and I made a decision to go and talk to the board directly this morning, face to face, and we did that. As you'd imagine, they're difficult discussions. They're difficult discussions to have, but they're also important discussions to have. So we were pretty upfront with them. We gave them copies of the breach notice today. They'll clearly have to digest those details, and we'll listen to their responses. But it was a difficult discussion.
What did you think of their statement on Sunday night, Steve Sharp threatening legal action?
I think the Parramatta Eels over the last couple of months have continued to do what they've done, which is continue to deny there are issues inside their club. And we had a duty to report the facts, and the evidence presented thus far is what we've acted on.
Is that the case again this morning?
Were they still denying wrongdoing this morning with you?
We didn't go into specifics about that, but what we suggested to them was that they should now take the time to digest the issues in the breach notice. What they do next is an issue for them.
Todd, what does this mean for the future of third-party agreements?
The future of third-party agreements? What I would say to you is that this issue today is not specifically related just to third parties. It's a much broader issue. Third-party payments in the game will be something that we'll talk to the RLPA about as in the next collective bargaining agreement with the players. That discussion has already started.
One of those other things is the inflated and created invoices. That seems to sail pretty close to fraud. Is there any suggestion that the police should become involved in those matters?
That's a matter for them, and if other agencies want to look at that, I'm sure they will.
In total, how much did your investigation uncover in terms of the breaches of the Eels in monetary terms?
In monetary terms, we estimate the clubs made promises of remuneration that haven't been disclosed to the NRL of about $3 million since 2013 in aggregate.
Todd, the breaches appear under your investigation to be pretty equal to what Melbourne Storm did or thereabouts. Can you understand Storm fans might be wondering why the penalty isn't as severe?
I think it is pretty severe. Every time this club plays with a roster that's above the salary cap, they won't accrue points. As soon as they have a roster that mirrors every one of their counterparts, they'll play for points. I think that's a fair and just outcome.
But Melbourne were told from the outset that they weren't going to be able to play for points the entire season. This team has got a glimmer of hope.
Yeah, so I didn't make the decision on Melbourne Storm, but I'm making the decision today. And the decision we've made, I think, gives you an eye to the future and gives some hope to the club. And I hope they take that.
Why are your feelings different about it from your predecessor?
When I watched Melbourne Storm fans and players have to continue to play a season without the ability to accrue points, I thought that was soul-destroying, both for the players and the fans. And I've tried very hard to find a way forward here that Parramatta Eels can take a step forward today.
How will you feel if Parramatta win the premiership this year?
If Parramatta win every game under the salary cap, I'll be very happy. But they have to comply with the salary cap like every one of the other 15 clubs.
Well, what are the chances of them, getting the house in order before that next financial next time?
That's up to them. That's up to the board of the Parramatta Eels and those who are responsible to discharge their duties, and they'll do that. But the decision rests solely with them now.
You run a club though, do you think it's possible?
Possible to...
Do you think it's possible that they will be able to get their house in order in 2 weeks? You know, you can speak from experience.
Yeah, I'm not going to put a time frame on it. I mean, the salary cap's a complex tool, so it's not as simple as just moving a player. They're going to have some discussions, but we're part of the solution. We said we'd help them, and I want to help them. I want to help this club realise its full potential. The Parramatta Eels have the ability to be a super club in this city in Sydney, and we want them to be that. But they need to be well managed and well governed in order for that to happen.
How can you help them?
We can help them through resourcing and giving them some insight and expertise. We can do that, but they've got to want to do that as well.
What's your message to the Parramatta fans?
My message to the fans is to get in behind their team. This is a difficult pill to swallow, but my message to the broader fan base is very clear and very deliberate. Our job here at the NRL is to run the game and to police the rules, and we will always put the game first in our decision making, and that's exactly what we've done today.
Nick, what lengths did you have to go to this time to get all this information that Parramatta obviously hid from you last year?
The rules of the NRL require clubs and require officials to tell us when they have suspicions that there's been breaches of the rules. The Parramatta Club didn't do that. We've been working with them for a long time, since we breached them last year in July, and we've been asking them questions where we've learned of information and they haven't been forthcoming. So what we've had to do is we've had to go and do our own work, and we've done that. We spent a number of months doing that very carefully. The evidence we've compiled is, in our view, strong. There's an opportunity now for the club, having received the breach notice this morning, and the individuals to come back and respond to that, and we'll assess it. But we've had to do a lot of work because the club hasn't helped us out.
Nick, how would you describe their attitude over this topic?
Pretty disappointing, to be honest. We rely on clubs to provide us with information that's accurate, to provide us with full information, and it's been difficult to get that out of Parramatta, but there's an opportunity for them now to do that.
Has there been cooperation from the outset? Do you think the penalty could have been different?
I think that there was an opportunity to deal with some of these matters some time ago.
So what was some, like, obviously you seized computers and that?
Yeah, we've obtained, we've done a forensic audit of the club. It's obtained a lot of documents. We've imaged phones and computers. We've interviewed people. So we've done a fair bit of work, and we think we've got a pretty good picture of what occurred at the club. We've put that picture to them today. Now there's an opportunity for the club and the individuals to come and tell us what we've missed.
Is that a warning to other clubs now? If they try to hide it, you do have the power to go in?
I think the thing with the salary cap is where there's a system like what we believe has occurred here, this has a large scale. The prospect of it coming out at some point is pretty high. So I think most clubs understand that. This might be a bit of a message to other clubs that they need to be compliant and careful in their salary cap practices.
What about player agents? Are you going to?
Yeah, there's a phase of this investigation to come, and that's going to involve looking at some of the material we have and the conduct of player agents. Ultimately, that'll be passed across to the Agents Accreditation Committee if, in fact, we identify material that we think they ought to have a look at.
Todd, five officials have been named, but are there other people to blame in this salary cap drama? And also, if those 5 officials go, who's going to run the club?
Yeah, well, there's 4 board members that are there now with a duty to represent the interests of the club. It's up to them to decide what they do next. We've offered our full help in that if they would like to take us up on some of that help, and we'll do that. This is going to be a difficult part for the club. It's a moment in time where they're going to need to make some good decisions, and that duty rests with them.
How much damage is this done to the brand of rugby league?
Well, it's not good for us. We've had 9 wonderful rounds. Membership, crowds, ratings are an all-time high. I think rugby league's in absolutely tremendous shape. I didn't want this day to come, but when we're presented with difficult decisions, we'll have to make those decisions on behalf of the game, and that's what we've done today. It gives me no joy, absolutely no joy today, to have to make this decision, and it was a difficult discussion to go and talk to the players, but again, our duty is to represent the best interests of the game.
Todd, you rattled off numbers indicating the instability of Parramatta coaches, CEOs, all the changes. Was this a necessary evil that the club needed to go through to finally get back on the level where it is functional?
You would have hoped not, but it's a moment in time now where Parramatta get the opportunity to effectively start off the field again, and I hope they take that with both hands.
Todd, they've had that chance before, and they've again just seems to slip back into factional fighting and politics. How can the NRL stop that happening? How can you ensure that that doesn't happen again? You just don't go through all this again.
Well, there are people appointed by the membership. That's the way their club works. There are some changes made around governance principles which we've asked them to fast track, and that will help. But these are decisions for their club. They've got to make good decisions for their club.
But they're a club that hasn't been able to do that. For decades now they've been able to make good decisions. Surely at some point you need to intervene and say, we will make the decisions on your behalf because you can't make them.
Yeah, the rules don't provide for that. What we have done is intervene and taken accreditation off 5 people. That's unprecedented in the game's history.
Todd, what happens to Parramatta's for and against?
It remains.
What happens if they edge out a team on for and against? Would be happy, comfortable with that?
It remains.
Have you got a message for the teams that Parramatta that have already had to play Parramatta this season?
Yeah, look, it's not ideal, Hoops. We've got to deal with the cards that we're dealt here, and we'll make those decisions. But at the moment, they're playing with a roster that's above the cap, so they can't accrue points, and that will continue until such time as they get under.
Do you need to reevaluate the system where clubs self-declare their compliance with the salary cap?
I think the rules are pretty clear on this, but I'll get Nick to answer that.
Look, I think the system is reasonably effective. I mean, there's a system through which we have a salary cap auditor. He has a team. We conduct regular audits. When we're put on notice that there might be activity at clubs that's in breach of the rules, we'll go and investigate it. And that's what we've done here.
I know it's complex, and I'll ask that you could be as simplified as best you can. I think you said $3 million since 2013 is the amount of money that we're talking about. How many players, say, this season were receiving more money than they should have been, do you think? Or does this affect the whole team? Can you just explain a bit about the logistics of how it works?
I think the best way of approaching that is you've got to look at a team in terms of the team's compliance with the cap. The team's above the cap. There's a number of players that have been made promises at the club over a number of years that weren't properly disclosed to the NRL.
How many players were made those promises?
A large number.
All of them?
Not all of them.
Nick, is it accurate that some of your evidence is players made cash under the table effect?
There's some evidence we put to the club this morning that they're going to need to respond to, and we'll assess their response, but part of the evidence involves that.
How much are we talking about?
Look, I'm not going to go into detail about the extent of it.
You deregistered officials that with the club, but what about guys that previously have left the club already, Scott Seawood, for instance?
We've made decisions today on the evidence presented. There are people who aren't working in the game, and if they apply for registration, we'll deal with that then.
Is there any suggestion in players that are culpable in this, that they knowingly took part in?
Look, I think that the phase of the investigation that was concluded today with the breach notices and the announcement relates to the club and to officials. There's a piece of work that we still need to do with respect to agents, and we will look at the conduct of some players in that as well. But in an ideal world, we'd reveal all that at one time, but it's important, given we reached the point we did with the club, to reveal that today.
What recourse have you got against players if they've knowingly done this sort of thing?
Well, look, there's an obligation under the rules, and that applies to officials, players, clubs, to comply with them. And so there's, like most things in life, there has to be accountability, and that applies to everybody.
But on a level, if you're receiving cash in your bank account, you obviously know what's going on. So you're saying that should have been declared?
Look, it's a bit difficult to make a broad statement across all the different types of conduct we're looking at. In some cases, it'd be perfectly reasonable for a player to be under the impression that he has a legitimate third-party arrangement with a company. We might look at that from a different perspective from the salary cap rules.
Nick, when you're looking at those direct payments that were made from the club's own resources, I think it's the first of the 3 points in your media release, how much money did that account for? And were you talking specifically wads of money, or was it transfers into bank accounts?
Look, I'm not going to get into all the detail. The club's got the breach notice this morning, but some of the resources the club has used to help fulfil promises it's made to players relates to cash. That's our assessment.
Bags of cash? The physical cash?
Currency, actual.
Like bank notes as opposed to bank
Yeah, but I'll say in the scale of the different activities the club's been involved in, that's relatively modest.
So could the Parramatta playing group conceivably take a pay cut of say 10% and that would reduce under the cap?
No.
Todd, if a certain player were to elect to retire very soon, how would that affect the salary cap situation?
We would deal with that on its merit, and there are provisions in the rules for players who retire early due to medical conditions, so we would deal with that on its merit.
But does that necessarily have to be satisfied from an insurance perspective, or is it end of game if that player just puts his hand up and say, I'm retiring?
No, the salary cap auditor has to be provided with all of the medical certificates, and he has to be certain that that's bona fide, and he would do that on its merit.
Has the salary cap auditor already got that paperwork? Or?
No.
To what extent is privatisation an option for Parramatta?
That's a discussion for Parramatta.
Nick, do you think other clubs are using these third-party payments?
We have to deal with the information we have. So we have information on Parramatta. We're dealing with that today. And at the moment, we don't have information with respect to other clubs that we're ready to act on.
There is other information.
We don't have any evidence that causes us to issue the type of breach notice today with respect to other clubs.
There's been a well-documented story back here in Foreign, a legal spat with Parramatta that's going on. Are you guys involved in that at the moment, though? Are you investigating that, or is that...
Look, we're here today to announce the outcome of the investigation in relation to Parramatta. Across the integrity unit, we look at a range of different things, but we don't, give a running commentary of what we're looking at.
Todd, have you reached out to Karen Foran today?
Not today, no, I haven't.
Right, guys, we'll look at that.